On to rugby, the first round of the Rugby Championship this weekend, and it seems that comeback victories are becoming a hallmark of the Alistair Coetzee era. But all in all, quite a disappointing performance, I guess, despite the scoreboard. What did you take from that game?
Yes, it was incredibly disappointing. I mean, it was another of those games where you sat for long tracts of the game and thought, when are the Springboks actually going to catch fire? When are they going to show that they're frankly a top 2 or top 3 power in the world? For a lot of the games we've seen from them so far this season, I don't mean just the Nelspruit game, but also the pre-test against a weakened Ireland side. They looked ominously like one of those teams that's fighting with several others for that mid-table respectability. And you think, surely Springbok rugby used to be, pride itself in being above that, in being the nearest challengers for the most part to the All Blacks. And we look a long way off that radar, I'm afraid, especially given that a few hours earlier we saw the All Blacks positively waltz their way to a victory over a pretty woeful Wallaby side. And that was in Sydney. The All Blacks go home, thank you very much, 5 points in the bag. They got the 4-try bonus point. South Africa already on the back foot, you could say, because our easiest fixture on paper, the home one against Argentina, was won without a bonus point. Although frankly, most of us will be just hugely relieved that we actually got over the line. I mean, we were 10 points down after 67, which is an indictment in itself about where we're at. Having said that, the one thing that got us over the line was that sheer Springbok grit, which you can never underestimate in any game, frankly. That's why the All Blacks will still always take to the field against South Africa with that certain amount of respect, even knowing that they are probably better, light years better in terms of strategy, game style, execution, etc. But the Boks did do the job. That's something, and maybe we shouldn't be too downbeat about now moving ahead to Argentina, because we have beaten them fairly convincingly on their own turf before. And sometimes when we're not particularly highly rated, when there's a bit of a gloomy national sentiment, we actually surprise ourselves and do quite well. So my long range tip is that we're going to do the double over the Pumas, which is perhaps a little bit brave considering what happened in Nelspruit. But that's my long range tip. But lots to work on. Lots to work on indeed.
On that note, Rob, what changes would you make? I mean, was there an element of this being an experimental team? The first run out for the Boks in the Rugby Championship?
Yeah, if I know Alistair, I don't think he'll make wholesale changes. That's not his method. He tends to want to build a template slowly, and he can at least say that he's got 3 wins out of 4 in his Test career so far. He's operating at 75%, for what it's worth, against obviously pretty moderate opposition. But nevertheless, I don't see him making sweeping changes. There's going to be one enforced one, of course. Julian Redlinghuis, the first choice tight head prop. Remember, he was operating behind Frans Malherbe, who in turn is injured. So a little bit of a developing problem at tight head. However, Vincent Koch came off the bench and looked really, really good at scrum time. So he's a natural fit for that number 3 spot. So he's the logical fit, enforced change. In terms of merit changes, I've suggested that Francois Lowe might be the guy closest to the axe. I don't think he's produced his best rugby. We know he can play very good rugby, but I don't think he's produced his best rugby in the last few weeks for South Africa. Maybe he's still quite tired, showing the after effects of that grinding English season in the on heavy pitches and in the mud. Yeah. Maybe his best is kind of ahead, but there's a big clamour for Jaco Kriel to come into the mix, and I think he's perhaps one guy who perhaps Alistair will bow to a certain amount of pressure. I mean, he's his own man, but he may bow to a certain amount of pressure for them to introduce a real tear-away, whippet-like player on that open side flank position. So that might be one tweak. Lionel Mapua, a little bit of a concern, I think, at outside centre. The centre pairing as a whole, not gelling at all at the moment. And Alistair's quite partial to Juan de Jong. Wouldn't be too surprised. I'm not saying it'll happen, but wouldn't be too surprised if Juan de Jong plays a bigger role in this game in Salta next weekend.